Fort Bragg, California is a small beach town northwest of Sacramento. It has a kind of Stephen King feel to it. You know what I mean, that misty, almost eerie small harbor town. But it's beautiful and a huge tourist attraction. You get people from all over the US that travel here. My fiance and I decided to drive up here after I had to take some time off of work due to stress. It was a last-minute decision and we packed up our bags in less than 10 minutes, grabbed our dog and took off. If we wouldn't have had our dog with us, I'm pretty sure that I would have lost her. I guess this is where I tell the story, right? It's our second day here right now, and we are staying at a motel that overlooks the ocean. You can see the fog roll in during the early hours of the morning, and watch the fishing boats leave the harbor to go get their haul for the day. It really is a beautiful thing to see. We woke up early and I was craving, and I mean craving, eggs and bacon. After getting dressed and deciding what spot to stuff our faces at, we left for our morning adventure. So here's where I made my mistake. I was driving down the road and it looked like the stop that we crawled up to was a four-way stop sign. I guessed wrong, because when I pulled out and cut off a small Ford Ranger with a dinky trailer attached to it and two old men driving, I realized it was a little too late that I had cut them off. They threw up their hands and pointed at me, but Lily didn't even notice it. I threw my hands up in a, "Sorry, I'm just a dumb tourist" kind of way, and they just stared me down. It was a hillbilly standoff that George Strait would have been proud of. I didn't think much of it and kept driving down the foggy two-lane road to get breakfast. I didn't even think to say anything to her about it. I never thought that I would see them again, and I didn't want her to complain about me not knowing how to drive. I was wrong though. I was wrong, and I'll never forget what happened next. We got back to the motel after a not so great but overly expensive breakfast. We cuddled up and talked about our plans for the future and what we wanted to do in life. But midway through our conversation, she realized that we were out of dog food to feed Bruce. I agreed to going up to the cute but creepy market and grabbing a bag of goodies. I kissed her on the cheek and jumped in the Navy. We called our navigator Navy. I left and got about halfway to the store before I realized that I had forgotten my wallet on the nightstand. When I pulled back into the parking lot, I saw it. That same Ford Ranger with the janky trailer attached to it. The only difference was that Hank and Boomhauer weren't inside of it. I don't remember seeing them here last night, I thought. I walked up to our door while looking over my shoulder wondering, what are the chances these guys are staying here? And then not 2 seconds later, my heart started beating faster. Our motel door was open but barely cracked. It was open slightly to the point where you could see a sliver of light but nothing more. I slowly pushed it open and looked inside, but I didn't see anything. Lily and Bruce were both gone. It was like they were never even there. My heart started racing, and I dropped my keys on the floor and ran outside, heart pounding in my chest faster than a jackhammer in New York. I didn't see the creepy old guys from the Ford truck or Lily outside. I was becoming angry and frantic by this point. Come on, where did you guys go? I thought before the screaming inside my head was cut off by the sound of familiar barking. I heard Bruce barking and I ran. I ran faster than I ever have in my entire 28 years of life. I ran straight over to the front office where the sound was coming from. And that's when I saw her and our dog inside the office. She was crying, sitting on the floor sobbing uncontrollably, and his hair was standing straight up until he saw that it was me sprinting towards them. Lily got up and ran into my arms. Meanwhile, the clerk is on the phone and I'm wondering, what the heck happened in the 2 minutes that I was gone? This is what happened, told by her, and it makes my body run cold. It turns out as soon as I left, not 30 seconds went by and those inbred guys knocked on the door. Lily opened it up thinking that it was me forgetting my wallet, which I did, and they tried to force their way into the room saying, "You can thank your boy toy for what's coming to ya," while grabbing her and covering her mouth. But those guys didn't realize one thing, and that's that we had a dog in our back seat when I cut them off. Bruce jumped off the bed and didn't hesitate to bite the one grabbing her, and they kicked him and tried to shake him off, but he wouldn't let go. After being bit and realizing that the noise would draw attention if they didn't leave, they ran off and Lily was able to sprint to the front office and wait for help while Bruce followed suit. I wasn't there and I couldn't protect her. If we would have found a dog sitter and our plans weren't last minute, she could be gone right now. But my dog was there and he did exactly what a good boy, no, the best boy would do. And for that, he truly is my best friend. If he wasn't there, what would have happened? Would she have been taken, killed, or all the above? The craziest thing is that they haven't been caught yet. We filed all the reports with the local sheriff. I told them what had happened earlier that morning, and the cop looked right at me and said, "You're lucky your dog was there. If he wasn't and they got in there with her, you could have been filing a different report right now." I got tears in my eyes at that. I looked over at Lily and Bruce and thanked God that I had rescued him from the pound, because in return, he rescued the love of my life when I couldn't. This happened a long time ago. I was around 5 or 6. But it comes up every once in a while at family gatherings, and though it isn't as bone-chilling as some of the stories on here, I figure that it fits well enough. For context, I have a very close extended family, as in a huge family that all lives within 30 minutes of each other. We all live in the suburbs of a large city, far enough away that it is generally considered a safe area with neighbors all knowing each other, and car doors are left unlocked in the driveway. When I was young, my grandma used to watch my cousin and I at the same age, and she had 2 dogs. Dog 1 was Benji, a sweet, lovable dog. Dog 2 was Cheyenne. She was nice enough, but we always preferred Benji as he was nicer, more playful, and just generally wanted to be around us more. We would always play in the backyard with each other, sometimes with supervision and sometimes not. It was a fenced-in yard, and like I said, a nice enough area. Nothing strange at all. Anyway, one day, we're playing outside as per usual. Benji is inside with Grandma. Cheyenne was outside but just laying away from us, as we played with our cars or whatever we were messing with that day. We didn't notice until he started talking, but once he speaks, we notice an older man, maybe 50 or something, trying to talk to us through the fence, no more than 20 feet away. He seems nice enough, but hey, I was young so I had no clue. We kind of walk over to him, but not very close, about 6 feet from the fence. He's talking to us about God knows what, and this whole time Cheyenne had started coming over by us and growling lowly. We didn't think much of it and kept talking. I can't remember what the subject of conversation was. All I know is that at one point he began to try to call us over to him, and to which we wouldn't. We knew that much at least. He was getting upset, and at that point he started to climb over the fence. I have never been so afraid of a dog in my life. Cheyenne starts going absolutely berserk, as in if he had gotten over the fence, I don't think Cheyenne would have let him leave the yard alive. He jumps back, and my grandma hears this happening, so she rushes out to the yard and sees the guy, us, and the dog going insane. She starts screaming like I have never heard her scream before, as he runs away and down the road. We ended up being rushed inside, where Grandma sat us down very nicely and explained the stranger danger thing again. My grandma had no idea who it was. It wasn't a neighbor. The whole time the rest of the day, Cheyenne would not leave our sides. I was always a little scared of Cheyenne after that. I know now that it wasn't fair to her. She was only protecting us. After that, I learned that I will always trust my dogs. We've had dogs as long as I can remember, and I will trust any of them over any person every time. I have no idea what he was planning on doing if he got in the yard, and Cheyenne hadn't been there. So, mister, stay away. And I'm sorry for being cold to you, Cheyenne. Please rest in peace. This occurred in 2017, and it's 100% true. Due to a multitude of factors, including a recent death of a close friend, I was unbearably depressed at this time of my life. For that reason, my family flew across the country to visit me in LA where I live, and we thought it would be nice to visit Catalina Island. When we arrived, it became apparent to us that it was the off-season. It was late November and the weather was cold, and as a result, the island was nearly empty besides locals and a few straggling tourists such as ourselves. My first priority was to ditch our luggage so we could explore the island, so we immediately checked into our motel. Though that word hardly does the place any justice. I call it a motel because all the doors of the rooms exited to the outside, but in actuality, our room was one of 20 to 30 quaint guest house looking buildings, arranged in a sort of horseshoe shape around a walkway, with rooms on either side of the path. The entrance to the motel was essentially one of the points of the horseshoe, and if you walked dead straight, you would reach the room that we were given, essentially on the corner before you have to go right to go further into the horseshoe. So from our room, one path led back to the street, the other one further into these secluded maze of rooms. Now stay with me. After a day of exploring and having just finished up dinner, it was time for the cold, dark walk back to the room. Catalina Island is a decent distance from the mainland, and let me just say, it gets dark. Similarly dark was my headspace after the dinner conversation took a left-hand turn, and my overwhelming depression got the best of me. I pulled my black hoodie tighter over my freezing ears and walked ahead of my parents to the hotel room, telling them that I just needed to go to sleep. And I did immediately. Depression sometimes makes that easy. I was already losing consciousness as they had entered after me, drifting off without so much as a good night. I then woke up to my mom saying my name, a harsh whisper. The room had 2 beds, and my parents' bed was closer to the door, and mine was further in the room. My mom's voice cut through the silence again. She sounded concerned for me. I didn't blame her considering my mental state at the time. Groggy, I rolled over. "What?" I asked. As my eyes adjusted to the dim moonlight coming in through the curtains, I saw her turn to face me. She was surprised to see me in my bed. Her eyes got wide. If I'm in my bed, who is she talking to? We both looked back to where she was previously looking to see, a hooded figure in all black standing over their bed. Now I know that you're reading this and knowing a creepy thing is going to happen, but understand how horrifically startling it would be to be on an island in the middle of the ocean and wake up to see a hooded figure looming over you. This moment seemed to last forever. Now life isn't like movies where characters unleash a blood-curdling scream. Sometimes the only thing that comes out is something panicked and guttural. My mom's words became low and severe as she said my dad's name in a dire voice that I had never heard her use before. And then the hooded figure did something so bizarre and unsettling. It didn't advance towards us, but instead, it crouched in the corner near where it stood. The way that it crouched was so absolutely unexpected, even in regards to this already unexpected situation, that it terrified me. It seemed animalistic. I knew 2 things. The hooded figure had been standing over us sleeping, and it's not acting in any sort of way that I can understand, as opposed to the infinite moment of this figure standing over us mere seconds ago. The series of events that unfolded when my hulking, ex-military dad woke up happened in an instant. Suddenly, we were out of the door, not knowing which way the intruder went. My mom was screaming, "Get him, get him!" My dad was running down one path of the horseshoe, further into the hotel, shouting through sheer adrenaline, "I'm going to kill you." I ran down the other path towards the street. When I got there, not a sign of the intruder, but it became suspiciously quiet behind me. I ran back to the room to find my dad quietly walking back, his head hung low. He gets really close to me and I hear him say, "It's a freaking kid." The explanation that he said was it was some young teen who was tall and lengthy as I am in my 20s, wearing all black including a black hoodie, and he had gone into the wrong room, our room. The one time my parents had just so happened to forget to lock the door. My mom woke up when he had entered and seeing a tall person in a black hoodie, she thought that it was me, assumingly leaving the room in a depressive episode. And when the hooded figure had crouched, that was him realizing his mistake and panicking. He was scared of us. As I got back to the room, my mom walked out and hugs this kid, who's now crying his eyes out. I would be too if a massive ex-soldier was sprinting after me with a murder in his eyes. So, this happened in 2016 when I was 17 years old. I was a first-year college student in film school. I'm 22 now and I'm Julia, by the way. I lived alone in my first ever apartment. It was really small, but I was really proud of my independence for it. Now, I never felt unsafe in this apartment for several reasons. There were multiple gates in the residence that needed to be opened, though, through a code that only people who lived there knew. My door had 3 different locks, and it was right next to the university, so most people who lived in the neighborhood were college students anyway. Nothing bad had ever happened in the neighborhood before. I've always been very careful with locking the door when I leave my home. I always check twice. I have slight OCD. So this one time, I leave to go to class and I locked my door. But for some reason, I couldn't get the key out of the lock. It was completely stuck, so I went to go get the caretaker of the building to help me. But he wasn't there and I was getting late for class. So I went to class with the key still in the lock. I took off the keychain first so it wasn't too noticeable. When I got home, the caretaker was back, so he came to help me, and we couldn't get it out for like 15 minutes until somehow he finally did. He told me that the lock was damaged, but that I didn't necessarily need to change it if I only locked it once instead of twice. I just said okay, and that was the end of it. I really wasn't worried because of how safe I felt in this building. Flash forward to about 2 months later, I was taking out the trash one night around 11 p.m. while on the phone with my sister. I remember telling her that I was taking out the trash, and then that I would take a shower afterwards before heading to a party. As I previously said, I always lock the door, even just to take out the trash. But because of my lock being damaged, I only locked it once. When I got back to my apartment, I found the door unlocked, which immediately alarmed me. So I went into the apartment and I locked the door immediately, with 3 different types of locks. Now when you walk into my apartment, which is only about 215 square feet, you have the main room in front of you and the bathroom door immediately to your left. I had left the bathroom door slightly open, just enough so I could see a man in my shower, turning his back to me. Naturally, when I saw this, I tried to open the door and leave as quickly as I could, except my main lock was damaged from 2 months earlier, and I couldn't open it no matter how hard I tried. In this moment, all I could think of was the fact that I needed to leave as fast as possible. I jumped out of the window without even really thinking. I figured it was the only solution, except I lived on the 2nd floor, so I completely smashed my ankles on the landing. I started running in whichever way I could, and when I got a little bit further from the building, I looked back and a man was there at my window watching me run away. I thought of two possible outcomes. Either the man was going to jump and chase after me, except I wouldn't get far with my twisted ankles, or he would get scared of the height and be locked in my apartment. Thankfully, he picked option 2. I went to hide in a bush a little further and I called the police, who arrived in just 10 minutes because I lived close to the station. They had pushed the door open and the man was there just sitting on my couch holding a kitchen knife, waiting for me to come back like he didn't think that I would call the cops. They arrested the guy and later told me that he had already been arrested for a series of crimes. They also told me how everything had happened. Like I said, it was a very friendly neighborhood with mostly college students, so we got inside the building by other people holding the door for him. He then heard me telling my sister that I was going to take a shower, which was why he was waiting in the bathroom for me. He had crocheted my lock while I was taking out the trash, and he apparently noticed me on the school campus, and he had followed me home several times before succeeding to actually come in. He stayed inside waiting for me because I had recently changed my phone, and the previous one was still on the table, so he thought that I didn't have a phone with me to call the police. I don't live there anymore, but after that, to get into the building, we all needed ID proving that we lived there. Building IDs were created and we had to scan them every time, and it was the only way to go inside of the building. Nothing bad had happened in the neighborhood after that. It's back to being very peaceful and friendly.